EU says escalating violence in Hong Kong unacceptable. Incoming message from Malili to China. It's hard to hear over the screams. Oh, here it is. I'm getting the transmission. They don't give a fuck. It is all a distraction. The Chinese economy is slowing, and eventually will go into a recession. Recessions are a natural part of the economic cycle and nothing to be ashamed about. The CCP for some reason thinks it is shameful, and will ruin their reputation with the Chinese people. Ironically, all this conflict will end up backfiring, and make it even worse. That's because they have a very simple trade with their citizens. Improving living conditions and prosperity, or at the least the chance of prosperity, and in return their citizens stay uncritical and obedient. Declining or small economic growth puts this in question. This is a really good summary that people miss. The CCP has massively delivered against this promise in the last 30 years, hence the lack of any mass objections to how the country is run. They only need to point at India to showcase what the country would be like if they'd gone with democracy, but I don't think the top brass realizes they could probably open up democracy at this point and still win with ease. That's partially true. It's also true that the average Chinese citizen enjoyed far more freedoms and liberty in, say, 2008 than in 2019. All of the trampling of Tibetan and Uyghur rights have been turned up to an 11 under President Xi. Media censorship has been amped up to an 11 as well. Remember that under Xi, even movies with ghosts are banned, not to mention TV shows with LGBT themes, violence depicting any Chinese government figures in a bad light, etc. These were not banned under President Hu, President Jiang, etc. President Winnie the Pooh has single-handedly helped usher in one of the most tyrannical regimes China has seen since the Mao years. Are ghosts too spooky for Xi? What's the deal? EU, unacceptable? What are you going to do about it other than watching and show your disapproval? We will hold a vote. If passed, the EU will send thoughts and prayers to the protesters in HK. I request a 3-month delay to the vote. This is unacceptable. We will act swiftly and decisively and hold the vote without delay after Christmas holidays. So 1.5 months, let's say within 2 months, at the earliest. Just to be sure, we'll just wait the short amount of time until the Brexit situation is resolved. And we need to have an election to decide who provides the thoughts and prayers first. Russia vetoes all of the above. Trump condemns Putin's veto on Twitter to show his base that he truly is the enemy of Russia. I request we hold a vote to vote on whether or not we should condemn this. Results to be announced in 6 months. If something is unacceptable, but not unacceptable enough for you to do anything about it, then it's actually acceptable. Because you've accepted it. Calls for sanctions are beginning. Join us in our calls. I'll believe it when I see it, not 1 second earlier. It's all talk and no action. I've done everything I can do. I wrote my MP and the Prime Minister. What else can I do? Apartheid in South Africa ended with international trade sanctions to support the protests. We need to do the same again. China might be scared of backing down on HK protest demands, because it would encourage protests in outer regions, but if international sanctions were placed on them, they would have social unrest throughout China. There is room to push China on this. How do you trade sanction someone whose trade you need more than they need yours? They need our food. We just need some electronic parts. We just need some electronic parts. Bruh, what are you on about? Nearly everything comes from China, rare materials too. Some rare materials are specifically only in China, and nowhere else in the world. We heavily rely on them, just as they do with the US. The rare materials is mostly cause we don't want to due to cost of environmental regulation here, which is a good thing. The Earth's supply isn't concentrated in China, just the cheapest supply point. They have a significant fraction though, to be fair. Can't start up a mine overnight and the US can't do without new electronics. China were fucking smart offering such cheap labor. They are now massively relied upon for manufacturing to the point many supply chains only exist in China, and they got to steal the rest of the world's technology/patents in the process. Any violence is of course unacceptable, and any action by the law enforcement authorities must remain strictly proportionate, and fundamental freedoms, including in particular the right of peaceful assembly and expression, must be upheld. See how the statement is worded. According to the Chinese perspective, they are saying that the violence by protesters are unacceptable and action by law enforcement must remain proportionate, which from the Chinese perspective are, since it's not a peaceful assembly and expression. Yes, looks like people are deliberately misinterpreting the EU statement. They're saying the protesters' violence is unacceptable, but that this violence does not give the police free rein to massacre people. The police need to use proportionate force. If you put HK police into perspective and compare them with Iraqi or Chilean police, I'd say their overall response is mostly proportional. If somebody decided to throw a Molotov at US police, they would have been gunned down within seconds. I agree with you, and it's actually very sad that fake news gets propagated on Reddit so much, and the fastest growing community will downvote reasonable views, edit because people won't get to see them, and actual real news concerning what is happening in Hong Kong. I've lived in Hong Kong for 7 years and it's very different on the ground from what you see on Reddit. Edit 2, I'm already getting downvoted. Then fucking do something about it. Like, maybe an embargo like post-Shinanman for starter? Economical pressure for an export country works well if everyone they exported to band together. You can also move manufacturing away from China. The US has been moving manufacturing from China to India, while Japan is moving manufacturing to Mexico. Even China itself is moving its own manufacturing to Africa as the costs of labor are lower there. All you need is time, but you can cut out China from most stuff. It's interesting that the US is moving to India and Japan is moving to Mexico. I'm sure there's good reasons. The specifics of NAFTA probably play into it, just kind of funny. It is not unacceptable. Please don't trade with China and buy any products from China. Yes, exactly. Boycott where you can. I'm tired of all these defeated posts saying it's impossible to not buy from China. Go to the store and refrain from buying the cheap plastic Christmas decorations made from China. That's a start. Just do something besides sit behind a keyboard and complain that nothing can be done. Boycotts simply don't work. The Chinese place face above pretty much anything else. That's where you need to hit them. The HK saga and increasing anger from the rest of the world is hitting them hard. This needs to ratchet up. Western banks are starting to contemplate moving out of HK, moving onshore a source back to France/London with only a skeleton contingent remaining. The Chinese need to wake up and see what cunts the CCP are. China may not care about the boycotts directly. However, boycotting does send a message to the company who currently manufactures in China that its buyers won't stand for it. Look at what it's done for animal cruelty in the cosmetics industry. More and more companies are moving towards becoming cruelty-free because it's what the consumers want. I agree, we need to ramp up the anger. Boycotting, or attempting to, is one way to show it. Displaying it on social media, in public, and to your representatives are more ways. It's tiring to open these threads and see comment after comment portraying this dystopian society where we can do nothing but accept what's happening around us. The Chinese people are currently enjoying their country's wealth and stability and don't wish to rock the boat. If and when that changes, there will be unrest. What about Bolivia? You know, countries where your ideology, neoliberalism, is causing state oppression of its civilians under American imperialism. Bolivia had a democratically elected leftist government. Whatever they did, it was wrong, and now the Bolivian people should be happy their democracy has been restored through a US-backed coup, so they can freely vote for a right-wing government that will sell out the USA, American media. I'm so tired of hearing exclusively about Hong Kong. There are other uprisings in the world, people, with a lot more deaths. Just because they don't fit your narrative doesn't mean they should be ignored. HK has the widest reaching international implications by far. This is not a dick measuring contest to see who is suffering more than the other. How so? It's time for the democracies of the world to unite in a supreme economic and military union in order to counter the increasing threat of authoritarianism and threats to international law. The EU, the Commonwealth, the East Asian democracies, and of course, grumpy old America. Together, we can ensure the power remains with the people. We can use our resources to pull manufacturing away from any country that doesn't abide by our principles or values. Make no mistake, they need us more than we need them. We've only done business with them because we are capitalistic in nature, but capitalism only works when both parties play by the rules. Let's all play together for mutual prosperity and strength, and any country that wishes to join us has to become a democracy and adhere to our rules in order to play with us. Sound good? Lol. These democratic countries you speak of are run by capitalists who give zero fucks about human rights. All they care about is maximizing profits, which is why they outsourced their labor to China in the first place, and why they will continue to do business with China. The rich fucks who do these things don't represent or control the public. They are simply exploiting the system. It's time to take back control by creating rules for how to play the game and to whom you do business with. If the democracies play with each other and prevent these companies from benefiting off dictators, the people regain their voice. The rich fucks who do these things don't represent or control the public. They really do. They essentially own politicians by funding their campaigns and flood the media with their propaganda. They have so much political control they write the legislation that is supposed to regulate their business.